Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Swallowed Star 2 Land of Origin based on novel. So let's start. Huyang City, inside the city owner's mansion. Luo Feng sat alone on the pavilion drinking wine, his brows furrowed, clearly troubled by something. Moyu Qingyang, that foolish lad, has finally comprehended another primal chaos realm secret technique. His accumulation has thickened somewhat. Morosa walked within the mansion in good spirits. Regardless of the distance Moyu Qingyang was from the primal chaos realm, he was getting closer. Although the second disciple of Blade River sect, Xin Yu, was far more talented, no other disciple surpassed his own. Upon looking up, Morosa saw Luo Feng in the distance on the pavilion. Strange. Morosa felt puzzled. There's something off about the master. Swoosh. Morosa quickly made his way up to the pavilion, cautiously addressing him in the corridor below the stairs. Master. Luo Feng glanced at Morosa. What is it? Does master have troubles? Morosa observed and inquired. I wonder if there's any way I can help. Morosa believed himself to have reached the second realm of Godly King, utterly surpassing the master in every aspect. Perhaps he could resolve the master's trouble. You cannot help. Luo Feng shook his head. Master, perhaps you could tell me? Morosa asked. Luo Feng chuckled. I have encountered a great terror. Fear uncontrollably springs forth in my heart. This greatly affects my cultivation. Do you have a method to prevent me from feeling fear? In full force, the Great Destruction heart refining technique indeed had the power to crush all stray thoughts, making one's spirit sufficiently pure and ethereal. But this also diffused much of his heart force, slowing down Luo Feng's thoughts considerably, and greatly reducing the efficiency of his contemplation and cultivation. It was less than half as effective as in his prime state. How could Luo Feng be in good spirits bearing such a negative impact for the long term? He was pondering how to solve this trouble. Encountered a great terror? Fears cropping up. Morosa was puzzled. What in the land of origin could possibly invoke fear in the master? Luo Feng just smiled. Would it cause the master to die completely? Even affect our kin? Morosa inquired, suspecting that the master had encountered a terrifying foe. There is no danger of death, Luo Feng said. It's just affecting my cultivation. If it's not lethal, what's there to be afraid of? Morosa asked. Luo Feng shook his head. One cannot control the heart by nature, and fear arises naturally. Control the heart, isn't that enough? Morosa looked at Luo Feng, puzzled. Control the heart? Luo Feng was slightly taken aback. As a godly king, with the will of the ultimate realm of God King, even he felt an intrinsic terror when faced with the memory of that huge eye. Yes, it's merely memory contamination. A threat even less than that of will contamination. What's there to fear? Intrinsic fear of life. Then I'll control the intrinsic. All fear comes from within. Control the heart, and you can control the intrinsic. Luo Feng vanished in the blink of an eye, leaving Morosa on the pavilion with a trace of confusion. What terrifying thing has the master encountered? Morosa wondered, bemused. Inside a space within Star Tower. Luo Feng sat cross-legged, ceasing the Great Destruction heart refining technique. The memory of that huge eye, as if gazing through eternity, looking down on him. Fear surfaced once more in his heart. His spirit trembled. Fear, subjugation, dread. Steady. It's merely a segment of memory within a dream, it can't threaten me, why should I fear it? Don't fear, face it. Face it. Luo Feng kept convincing himself. But knowing that is one thing, life's intrinsic is another. Fear continually bloomed, spreading ever wider. The horror brought by that huge eye dug deeper into Luo Feng's heart. Face it. It's only memory. Luo Feng forced himself to confront it. As time passed by, the fear penetrated deeply, becoming more influential, until Luo Feng could only utilize the Great Destruction heart refining technique, erasing all stray thoughts, to restore the clarity and ethereal nature of his spirit. After erasing the thoughts, Luo Feng again stopped performing the heart-refining method, and continued to face it. Control your own heart, your own intrinsic. Luo Feng kept confronting it willingly. From initially having to perform the Great Destruction heart-refining technique every few days to erase all stray thoughts, gradually, tens of days, thousands of days, the longer he observed, the more familiar he became with the horror brought by the huge eye, the stronger his control over his spirit. After half an age, the fear of facing it is now quite weak. Even without the assistance of the Great Destruction heart-refining technique, Luo Feng could withstand facing the huge eye for an extended period. Those godly kings who cultivated the primordial bloodline did the same, repeatedly challenging and suppressing the will of their bloodline. This, too, was a kind of tempering, and like the cloud sky god king, reached the god king ultimate realm will through such tempering. Luo Feng's spirit had also undergone transformation during this period. Is this giant eye real, belonging to some terrifying being, or is it merely an illusion within the dream realm? Luo Feng was quite curious. It is the most terrifying existence I have ever witnessed, even though it was only seen in the dream realm. We could try to create an extremely terrifying secret technique. Luo Feng was inspired to create a secret technique. In previous years, he had comprehended all 9 branches of the Tao of Life and Death. With the 9 branches of the Tao of Life and Death, I can try to create this technique. Luo Feng faced the giant eye, ignoring the slight fear it inspired, as he attempted to create the secret technique. The 9 branches of the Tao of Life and Death were as follows. The initial 6 branches that he had understood: blood dripping, red sun, annihilation, eternal, black smoke, and walker lineages, and the later 3 that he continued to comprehend: the skylight, nihility, and reincarnation lineages. The 9 branches encompassed the core essence of the Tao of Life and Death. Each branch extracted some mysteries from both the 6 life branches and 6 destruction branches, each extremely formidable. That giant eye should focus on the eternal branch, blood-dripping branch, and reincarnation branch. Luo Feng had faced it for so long that he now had a direction for the secret technique. And then supplemented by the red sun branch, black smoke branch, and nihility branch. The integration of 6 branches. A technique that perfectly integrates them should capture some essence of that eye. Luo Feng began to ponder. The conception was so lofty that creating it proved more difficult than Luo Feng had anticipated. Whenever he encountered confusion, Luo Feng would directly face the giant eye, watch it closely, study why it caused such great horror, while searching for inspiration to refine the technique. Fully focused on creating the secret technique, Luo Feng had no interest in other matters. Even when the Reincarnation Tower invited him to join an expedition, Luo Feng temporarily declined, saying he was in closed-door cultivation and had no interest in exploring treasures. I no longer feel fear when facing this giant eye. After more than a decade of studying the giant eye and trying to create the secret technique, no matter how he faced it, he no longer felt any fear. Once fear vanished, the great eye's help in cultivation also lessened. The 7 emotions of heart-refining technique increases my perception. Luo Feng began to cycle the 7 emotions of heart-refining technique. In this state, emotions such as joy, anger, sorrow, thought, grief, fear, and shock were much more intense, and even slight emotions could raise huge waves in his spirit. Boom! Once he activated the 7 emotions of heart-refining technique, the giant eye once again provoked a strong sense of fear in Luo Feng, as if he were facing it for the first time, his spirit trembling with fear. Good, this is the feeling I want. Luo Feng was overjoyed and again went to perfect the secret technique. The secret technique was gradually perfected. Decades passed. Finally, after 34 decades of Luo Feng facing the giant eye, I've done it. Inside the Star Tower, Luo Feng was incredibly excited. The long years of research had finally led to the success of creating the secret technique, a sense of accomplishment that left Luo Feng very satisfied. I have finally created this secret technique. It wasn't easy. It was much harder than the chaotic whole undying light. Luo Feng was incredibly thrilled. This memory from the dream realm wasn't a disaster, but a blessing. Now, even while maintaining the 7 emotions of heart-refining technique, that giant eye could no longer inspire fear in Luo Feng. Because Luo Feng had researched it too deeply. Understanding too much, the mystery was lost, and naturally, the sense of horror disappeared. After all, it was just an image from a dream realm memory. The dream realm memory I studied is just an image. If it truly exists, I wonder how terrifying it would be, Luo Feng thought. In essence, the secret technique I've created this time is strictly the life and destruction Dao second realm secret method. Luo Feng smiled brightly, his emotions under the heart refining technique even more intense. Last time, the perfected chaotic whole undying light actually merged 2 life branches with 3 destruction branches, a total of 5 branches. This time, it was the full integration of 6 branches from the 9 branches of the great Tao of life and death, a true life and destruction Tao second realm secret method. Although he hadn't tested it yet, Luo Feng could tell that the power of this new secret technique was far beyond that of the chaotic whole undying light. Having been a god king for over 2 centuries, it is only now, with the help of a dream realm memory, that I have finally created this move. Luo Feng knew that without such accumulation, it would have been difficult to create such a technique in a short period. This time was entirely influenced by the memory of the dream realm, which provided a clear direction and took over 3 decades to create such a technique. This secret technique, with each branch being extremely powerful, and the integration of 6 branches, could its power match an ultimate realm secret technique? Luo Feng was somewhat curious. Emperor Gui Shu, Wuxin God King, they all had ultimate realm secret techniques. While each of his branches was strong, it was Emperor Gui Shu and Wuxin God King who unified all branches into a perfect entity, creating a qualitative change that truly made their techniques ultimate realm secret techniques. Let's see. The secret technique could be executed with the body or different weapons. With a blade it would be a terrifying blade technique, with an axe technique, and with a hammer, a destruction hammer technique. Luo Feng stretched out his hand. His right hand darkened instantly as if becoming the core of the entire world. If the world were to end, his hand would remain unharmed. Carrying an endless terror, Luo Feng's palm struck out with 5 fingers. Boom! In a flash, his 5 fingers shone dazzlingly bright, forcefully destroying everything. The invisible membrane of the source world was shattered, tearing open to reveal a trench several jong long. Outside the membrane of the source world, rolling black currents surged through the trench. This move shall be called the Great Extinction style. Luo Feng, seeing this scene, was quite satisfied. This segment of dream memory no longer produces the slightest fear. Luo Feng carefully observed the giant eye within the memory, feeling regret instead, regret that it was a dream memory, not clear enough. Having become a godly king for over 2 centuries, I've spent almost all the time in the dream domain undergoing the destruction refinement method. After wholeheartedly creating the Great Extinction style, a hint of fatigue blossomed in Luo Feng's heart. While maintaining the 7 emotions of heart refining, his inner emotional turmoil was also intense, and the slightest bit of fatigue spread through his spirit. It's time to relax my body and mind. For my heart refining, I originally chose the Great Destruction heart refining technique and the 7 emotions of heart refining technique. Now, it's time to relax with the 7 emotions of heart refining technique. With just a thought, Luo Feng immediately took action. A black-clad avatar of Luo Feng left Huyang City, heading first towards the Shi Kingdom. I've always wanted to completely kill the 3 monarchs of the Shi Kingdom to avenge my teacher. But I don't have a deep understanding of the Shi Kingdom. The black-clad Luo Feng wandered leisurely, his knowledge of many places across the continent relying on intelligence reports. But this time, Luo Feng decided to see for himself. Throughout his tour of the continent, Luo Feng maintained the 7 emotions of heart refining technique. The reputation of Tian Kuan's emperor of the Shi Kingdom is quite bad, invading neighboring areas and killing at will. But the cities within the Shi Kingdom are quite prosperous. Luo Feng toured city after city, listening and watching any musician proficient in the music illusion technique. Gourmet food, dances, music. Under the influence of the 7 emotions of heart refining technique, the pleasure Luo Feng experienced was 100-fold, 1,000-fold. Good. Well done. Upon tasting delicious food, Luo Feng was generous with his reward, casually tossing out hundreds of cosmic sand, exciting the shop owner. To become an eternal true god through culinary skills? Impossible. It's impossible to be this awful. Tasting something appalling, Luo Feng's suffering was also magnified 100-fold, 1,000-fold, and he couldn't help but seize the chef in anger. It turned out that after he paid a hefty price for the chef's cooking, the chef had his apprentice do the cooking, and the apprentice did it carelessly. In the end, Luo Feng smashed up the restaurant before finally departing. "I come to listen to music and you're shouting and yelling next to me." Luo Feng kicked an eternal true god clear out of the entire city, and immediately all the guests quieted down like chickens. The musicians also trembled in their hearts, playing even more earnestly. While exploring various places, Luo Feng was very relaxed. Under the influence of the 7 emotions of heart-refining technique, his behavior was even more unrestrained than usual, laughing and cursing as he pleased. Asterisk 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 asterisk. One day, Luo Feng came to the Wind Snow Tower, attracted by its fame. "I've heard that the music and illusory realm performances of the Snow Tower Master are ranked among the top 10 throughout the Sha Kingdom." Luo Feng sat leisurely, taking out a collection of fine wines, as he couldn't count on the place to have good wine for listening to music. These wines were all sought out by Luo Feng from gourmet destinations across the lands, affordable, yet each with unique characteristics. Luo Feng took a satisfying sip, the fine wine intoxicating his senses. The sound of music began to rise. The Snow Tower Master had already begun her performance, her snow-white wings and a face covered with soft down, her eyes kind and gentle. She held a flute-like instrument and played. The music was tender, as if penetrating the soul. All cultivators in attendance enjoyed the endurance within. With Luo Feng's spiritual will, even deploying the 7 emotions of heart refining, it was hard for him to completely fall into an illusory realm again, but music that resonated with the soul, even without entering an illusory realm, was still a delight. "Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Among the musicians I've heard, she would rank in the top 3, admired Luo Feng. The Snow Tower Master performed one piece after another, a total of 12 pieces, each more soul-piercing as it progressed. Luo Feng listened deeply immersed. He felt as if he had returned to his youth when he went to the martial arts hall for practice, to the times he tasted his parents' cooking. Many beautiful and warm memories surged to his heart. Only when the music halted did Luo Feng come to his senses, with tears in his eyes. I unknowingly entered an illusory realm." Luo Feng was astonished as he looked at the Snow Tower Master with the snow-white wings. "Among the musicians I have seen, she ranks first. 12 pieces, each a primal chaos realm level, and all perfectly fused into one. This Snow Tower Master, she must not be far from achieving the primal chaos realm. The most important thing is, she has a strong spiritual will." Luo Feng naturally confirmed this after waking. Only with an extremely strong spiritual will infused into the music could it have such a powerful impact. Her spiritual will, even if it has not reached the pinnacle of primal chaos realm, must be close. Luo Feng felt admiration for talent. After all, she is a genius poised to reach the primal chaos realm through the path of music, and with an exceptionally strong spiritual will, Luo Feng truly appreciated. With this interest for talent, Luo Feng began to observe the Snow Tower Master closely. This look caused a slight change in Luo Feng's expression. After the Snow Tower Master finished her performance, she turned and left without speaking. Guests then came out of their trance, each exclaiming in admiration. On one of the corridors of the Wind Snow Tower, the Snow Tower Master walked along the corridor, puzzled to see the black-clad man sitting comfortably drinking wine ahead. "This is a forbidden area of my Wind Snow Tower, not open to guests. How did he suddenly end up here?" And the formation had no reaction. The Snow Tower Master was somewhat puzzled. "Shuefengyu." The black-clad man set down his wine jug, looked over calmly, and said, "A heavenly snow woman by tribe, born among the clan, cultivated into an eternal true god through talent. Later, controlled by a mysterious force, am I right?" Luo Feng watched the Snow Tower Master. The Snow Tower Master's expression changed slightly as she immediately offered a respectful salute. Faced with the Supreme, "I do not know what your commands are." She couldn't determine the strength of the being before her. "I have 10 registered disciples under my wing. Would you be willing to become the 11th? Luo Feng, carried by the mood, directly proposed. He had already planned that during his visit to the land of origin, he would take on some registered disciples if fate allowed. Upon hearing this, the Snow Tower Master felt a surge of melancholy. If a powerful being had taken her as a disciple a long time ago, she would naturally have been overjoyed. But now, the Supreme knows, I am not my own master. How can I take guidance from another master, said the Snow Tower Master. Not your own master? Luo Feng looked at her. Under the domain of his own world, Luo Feng saw at a glance the mark on the Snow Tower Master's forehead and the true god's heart inside her infiltrated by layer upon layer of secret patterns, already completely controlled. She couldn't even commit suicide if she wanted. Disperse. Luo Feng softly commanded. Around him, the world revolved with Luo Feng as its center, causing both the mark and the secret patterns on the true heart to disperse. Now you are free to govern yourself, Luo Feng said to her. The Snow Tower Master couldn't believe it, feeling the controlling power dissolving from her body. She was overwhelmed with emotion and immediately knelt. Disciple Xue Fengyu greets the Master. Luo Feng nodded in satisfaction. Master, the power that controlled me is unfathomable. The Snow Tower Master immediately reported. Luo Feng looked up with a smile. That power has already arrived. In the high sky, a colossal figure crossed the void, bathed in thunder, its might covering billions of kilometers. As soon as it appeared, it completely sealed off the vast region around it from the inside and out. Which godly king dares to break my secret technique and snatch away my divine son? The figure bathed in thunder looked towards Luo Feng. So it's Luo He from the Blade River sect. Luo He, seeing the mystery of my secret technique, you still dare to act. Upon hearing this, the Snow Tower Master was startled. Luo He? The Luo He God King was extremely famous in the surrounding territories. After all, many cultivators had rushed to join when the Blade River sect was established. I am Luo He, Luo Feng said, looking up at the other party, puzzled. And who are you, lingering in the shadows, still not daring to reveal your identity even now? Who I am, someone at the first realm of Godly King is not worthy of knowing. The imposing figure spoke, I am taking my divine son away. If you dare to stop me, don't blame me for leveling your Blade River sect. Saying so, the towering figure stretched out a massive hand. This huge cyan palm, emitting countless bolts of thunder, larger than an entire large city, directly enveloped the area. This scene terrified countless cultivators within the city. There's always a group skulking around in this land of origin, Luo Feng shook his head. Hiding identities within treasures is one thing, but to still hide oneself when capturing an eternal true god in the open. The Snow Tower Master watched nervously at the side. Luo Feng casually waved his hand, be gone. A chaotic whole undying light nurtured within his body was released at once. This blade light, honed to the extreme, instantly cut across the giant hand. The giant hand was strong and tough, but under this blade light, it was forcefully severed, and golden blood dripped down. What? Impossible! The imposing figure shouted in surprise and anger. His strong and resilient body couldn't withstand that blade light? Puff! The blade light swept across his body once more, cleaving it in two. The blade light pursued the towering figure, almost in the blink of an eye, cutting the imposing figure into dozens of pieces. Under this blade light, his seemingly mighty body was utterly unable to withstand. Luo He, have you advanced to the second realm of Godly King? The towering figure could not believe it. This terrifying oppressive force and the enigmatic nature of the blade light both exceeded that of the Emperor of Tianquan. He felt the difficulty of dealing with this blade light, as if the blade light could cut everything, and its energy could continuously recover. With his realm's tactics, he simply couldn't dodge this blade light. Stop, stop, take the divine son if you will, the towering figure urged. Luo Feng, sitting there, looked up. You at the second realm of Godly King, why are you so weak? Boom. Seeing Luo Feng not stopping, the figure had no choice but to explode frantically, turning into countless thunders that fled in all directions, still partially sliced by the blade light in an instant, the remaining thunder disappearing into the world. Whoosh! The streak of blade light flew back from afar, returning to Luo Feng's palm. The Snow Tower Master witnessed this tremblingly. Her master's methods were indeed terrifying. Not bad for power, Luo Feng said, observing the blade light. The blade light hadn't diminished at all and, with a thought, he reabsorbed it into his inner world. Come with me to Huyang City. Do you need to prepare anything? Luo Feng asked the Snow Tower Master. Master, I need to bring my tribe, said the Snow Tower Master. Okay. Luo Feng's body divided, creating an avatar, taking the Snow Tower Master and her tribe to Huyang City together. Luo Feng's original body continued on his journey of exploration. Luo He, I heard you've reached the second realm of Godly King, contacted the monarch of Yu country. You're well informed, Luo Feng laughed heartily, not denying it. From the first realm of Godly King to the ultimate realm, there was no difference in the foundation of divine power or soul, it was mainly the difference in the Tao. Without displaying one's realm of the great Tao, other cultivators would find it difficult to determine. Luo Feng could wield the secret technique of second realm of Godly King, and such profound secret technique at that, the outside world naturally believed he had broken through. Next part. Amazing, truly worthy of being the strongest Godly King in the history of the land of origin, ascending to the first realm of Godly King in just over 2 centuries and has even reached the second realm, the monarch of Yu country exclaimed. In the land of origin, there are many stronger than me, Luo Feng laughed, inadvertently acknowledging himself as being in the second realm of Godly King. The chaotic whole undying light and great extinction style he had realized, along with the second realm secret techniques he would realize in the future. Possessing such powerful secret techniques, who would believe he was still in the first realm of Godly King? Moreover, Luo Feng was intentionally creating higher realm secret techniques at a lower realm to hone his comprehension. In fact, in terms of accumulation, the paths of life and destruction could easily propel him to the second realm of Godly King if he pursued them deliberately. By acknowledging himself as in the second realm of Godly King, his strength seemed more reasonable. With your talent, Luo He, you have every chance of reaching the ultimate realm, the monarch of Yu country said. The ultimate realm is much harder than the second realm of Godly King, Luo Feng replied. In the land of origin, a fair number of secret techniques of the ultimate realm had been realized by emperors and monarchs, even those at the level of Emperor Guishu could manage it. But in this era, only the Lord of 10,000 Realms and Emperor Qing had reached the ultimate realm. Yes, it's very difficult, the monarch of Yu countryside, having not even realized a single ultimate realm secret technique himself. The news that Luo Feng had defeated a second realm Godly King with a single chaotic whole undying light spread rapidly, even detailed battle images were available. This Luo He, without showing his physical strength, simply released a blade light to defeat an ordinary second realm Godly King. The Emperor of Qian Kuan of Shi country also keenly watched the battle images. This blade light is not from a weapon secret treasure, but from condensed prowess. It possesses such terrifying power. With attributes like all things can be cut, unavoidable, energy eternal, it has many terrifying aspects. The Emperor of Qian Kuan, being a high-ranking overlord, recognized many fearsome traits of this blade light. This blade light reaches a very high realm. I can't perform such a refined move myself, the Emperor of Qian Kuan admitted, his feelings complex. Even if I were to utilize my full power with the primordial bloodline, I probably could only match this one blade light. Is this what they call a peerless talent? The Emperor of Qian Kuan, himself a reigning overlord, felt a sense of powerlessness facing Luo He. Last time, Luo Feng's techniques were still clumsy, merely relying on having many avatars and a resilient physical body to entangle the enemy. In just over 2 centuries, his previously weakest aspect, realm, had already surpassed that of the Emperor of Qian Kuan. I'd better keep more distance from him in the future, the Emperor of Qian Kuan thought silently. Of course, he wasn't alarmed. Even if Luo Feng's realm was high enough to master ultimate realm secret techniques, comparable to Emperor Guishu or Wuxin God King, so what? Even at the Emperor level, no one would dare claim they could destroy the Emperor of Qian Kuan in one stroke, leaving him no chance for reincarnation. The life force of the Emperor of Qian Kuan, with his primordial bloodline, was also exceptionally robust. Below the endless flames, a figure appeared, none other than the first Emperor Di Yang of the Flame-Wind ancient country. Luo He has reached the second realm of Godly King? Di Yang nodded slightly, his realm has greatly improved, and is skilled in creating avatars. For my flame-wind ancient country, he could be very useful, handling many tough and arduous tasks. Among the guest elder godly kings, Luophone was already considered a powerful force, with his multitude of avatars equivalent to a group of royal family godly kings. The only obstacle is his master Emperor Chu. Di Yang frowned. He believed that, on one hand, the emperor's strength was a deterrent, and on the other hand, offering merit resources, Luophone would obediently bow down and toil without complaint. But with Emperor Chu around, he would certainly protect his disciples' interests. Revealing some of his strength had stirred up some disturbances, but Luophone continued to leisurely stroll around. Although the large cities of Sha country are prosperous, the wilderness outside the cities is much more brutal and cruel. Luophone frowned slightly, watching a warship approach a tribe in the distance. The tribe comprised merely a few thousand creatures. The warship carried a crack troop consisting of 10 true gods of void space and 100 true gods, who now led with a secret treasure that produced a massive bag, aiming to completely swallow the whole tribe. This is bad. Run. Panic ensued within the tribe. However, the troops on the warship were quite casual, having grown accustomed to such tasks. Every so often, they had to capture enough creatures to offer up. If the numbers fell short, they would have to pay with their own lives. Scram! A commanding shout instantly transported the warship billions of kilometers away, and the tribe miraculously survived. The few thousand creatures in the tribe stared blankly at the scene. The massive bag and warship that had dominated the sky disappeared. Hurry! We've been discovered, we must hide deeper in the mountains. Quick! Move quickly! The tribe swiftly mobilized, taking only essential items, and moved to a more secluded location aboard a flying boat. From afar, Luophone watched the entire tribe relocate. This is Sha country, known for its cuisine, but also for devouring countless creatures. Luophone shook his head lightly. When he annexed 10 primal chaos prefectures of Sha country, he discovered that their wilderness tribes all lived in extremely remote areas. That emperor of Tien Kuan, he intends to consume countless creatures over the long term. This was also why Sha country was so brutally aggressive in its expansion. In fact, with the strength of Sha country, annexing some third-rate nations through sheer force was usually unchallenged. Through normal negotiations and intimidation, annexation was easily achieved. This was a common way for many second-rate nations to expand their territories. However, Sha country preferred bloody massacres. When annexing a nation, usually, every single resident of the royal capital of that nation was devoured, leaving no one alive. As for the wilderness tribes, there were mass captures for consumption. The emperor of Tien Kuan, protecting the prosperity of large cities and maintaining the sustainability of wilderness tribes, only periodically captures some. Only when annexing other nations does he have his feast. In the land of origin, this isn't considered unusual. Luophone sighed. The land of origin was more brutal and wicked than the emperor of Tien Kuan, with many others still far surpassing it. They occupied vast territories, devouring countless creatures at will, with no hope for these creatures to ever rise up. Compared to that, the mysterious force that had previously enslaved and controlled Shuefengyu only enslaved a few geniuses. In the land of origin, when it came to sin, they were hardly worth mentioning. Luophone wandered from place to place. Second-rate nations, numerous third-rate nations, he even visited the Tianmu Kingdom and the Wanjie Kingdom, passing through many smaller neighboring countries, and finally took a route around the Thunder Ancient Country, stepping onto the Tianji icefield from the border of the Thunder Ancient Country. Except for the most remote East Extreme domain, Luophone had traveled all across the land of origin. During this process, Luophone also took on some registered disciples. The wind and snow howled. The deeper into the Tianji icefield, the colder it got. Most outdoor areas were uninhabitable for ordinary tribes. Thus, countless creatures built cities. Luophone walked alone through the snow. Achem! Luophone's ears twitched. He heard the sound of melodious music. Beautiful piece. Luophone's eyes lit up. Having traveled through most of the land of origin, he had heard many pieces of music, but fewer and fewer moved him. Looking ahead, Luo Feng saw a desolate city covered with ice in the distance. Atop its walls a figure held a leaf, playing solo. The music spread and filled the whole city. The lonely melody, however, warmed the soul. Luo Feng saw memories of his days in school with his wife Xu Xin, and playful moments with his sons Luo Ping and Luo Hai. Luo Feng naturally immersed himself in these beautiful memories. "And Fengya, are you done playing? If you're finished, I'll make my move." An elite military troop was also near the city walls, waiting for the music to stop before their leader spoke. The young man in white on the walls, smiling, said, "Thank General Yun for allowing me to finish this newly created piece. And Fengya, duty calls, don't blame me." General Yun said, "Are you going to surrender, or should I take action? Please." The young man in white said with a smile. Suddenly, the elite military squad transformed into a giant black exotic beast, charging towards the young man in white. The young man in white pulled out an oval musical instrument and began to play a tune that turned into various illusory realms, capturing the black exotic beast. Alas, the black exotic beast, with unified spiritual power, was not afraid. "My strength is insufficient," the young man in white sighed as the huge claw of the black exotic beast loomed over him. "Little guy, the piece is nice." A voice sounded. The young man in white looked over in shock. A man in black sat atop the city wall holding a wine jug, drinking and smiling at him. Meanwhile, everything around became quiet, and the huge black exotic beast froze mid-air. "And Fengya has met the Supreme," the young man in white immediately greeted. "And Fengya?" Luo Feng nodded slightly and contacted the Flame Wind Pavilion to obtain all the detailed information about "And Fengya." "And Fengya, you love music and wander through many cities," Luo Feng observed him. "Because you saw a small city's hundreds of millions of creatures about to be devoured, you injured the son of Juyi God King and saved the city's people. Is this elite army chasing you under Juyi God King's command?" "Yes." And Fengya respectfully answered, "This Supreme knew everything. Knowing he was the son of Juyi God King, why did you intervene?" Luo Feng asked. "One life for hundreds of millions, it's naturally worth it," and Fengya smiled. "After I intervened, those hundreds of millions of lives immediately dispersed and fled, and I believe most of them survived. Are you willing to exchange your own life for the lives of hundreds of millions of unfamiliar creatures?" Luo Feng was surprised. Luo Feng knew he couldn't do it. He was willing to sacrifice for his hometown and tribe, but he could not sacrifice for strangers. "All of us are the essence of heaven and earth, all of us brilliant lives," and Fengya smiled with a smile so infectiously. Luo Feng could feel that And Fengya spoke from his heart. Perhaps, it was a soul that genuinely loved and devoutly cherished all life that could create such music. "I currently have 19 registered disciples, would you like to become the 20th? Luo Feng asked him, drawn by his love for music. Most of the registered disciples Luo Feng had taken on during his travels across the land of origin were skilled in music, with 2 specializing in culinary arts. And Fengya was startled and couldn't help but say, "Supreme, I have offended the son of the Juyi God King. From today onward, there will be no Juyi God King in the land of origin." Luo Feng smiled at him. A mere first-realm godly king causing trouble far and wide. Since he had a grudge against my disciple, he had tied himself to the same fate. Might as well deal with him now. And Fengya was surprised and immediately knelt down. "Disciple and Fengya, greets master." "Ha ha ha." Luo Feng laughed, very satisfied. At the same moment, an avatar of Luo Feng already traversed through the void, searching for that Juyi God King. In a majestic palace, within the quiet room, Juyi God King revealed his true form, a massive avian creature. His body was shrouded in ink-like mist, with a hint of blood red at the top of his head, and his cold eyes appeared both closed and open. He was born in the primordial cosmos and had come to the land of origin via the Samsara channel. In the primordial cosmos, he was a special kind of life form, inherently a ferocious avian creature that delighted in consuming other creatures. He was like a nightmare in that cosmos, annihilating one group after another. Eventually, he became the most terrifying entity in the border territories of that primordial cosmos. All living beings within were consumed by him, And only after he passed through the samsara did the newly born creatures in that area get a chance to breathe. Yet upon arriving in the land of origin, his strength continued to rise, and he later took control of his home primordial cosmos too. His divine power incarnations randomly consumed living beings at will. In the land of origin, I'm still not strong enough, Juyi God King lamented. Although he was born with a predilection for consuming living beings, he could now only indulge himself within his own territory to whet his appetite. The children he had raised in the land of origin had extraordinary bloodlines and were born powerful, most of them also preferring to devour creatures. When will I become truly invincible in the land of origin? Juyi God King wondered expectantly, his icy eyes shining with anticipation. Only then can I consider the entire land of origin my hunting ground. It would be a true delight, utterly carefree. Suddenly, an invisible attack descended. Juyi God King vanished silently into nothingness. As if a rubber had erased him, he was no more. His weapons and treasures, however, fell to the side, untouched by the assault. In the quiet room, Luo Feng dressed in black appeared on the scene. His too weak, Luo Feng shook his head lightly. With just a slight penetration of my Great Extinction style, he's gone. Great Extinction style was a combination of 6 branches of the Great Tao of life and death with curse-killing properties that could affect all avatars of the opponent. Of course, Juyi God King did not have an avatar, and at the moment of his death, his resurrection carrier was impacted as well. A resurrection carrier could be something as simple as a drop of blood or a feather, which was far less resistant than an avatar. Under the Great Extinction style, it was instantly annihilated. Because it happened so swiftly, Juyi God King didn't even have time to use his reincarnation secret art. You are the first godly king to die under my Great Extinction style. Luo Feng was quite pleased with the power of this move, which he had created over the span of 30+ years, referencing the memories from his dreams. Annihilate. With just a thought from Luo Feng, a wisp of black smoke instantly crossed vast distances and descended upon the 7 children of Juyi God King. Aside from a daughter who loathed consuming living beings and took a different godly king as her master, the rest of the 7 were like Juyi God King himself, relishing the prolonged consumption of countless creatures. With the death of Juyi God King, the primordial cosmos he controlled was once again free. Buzz. Outside the primordial cosmos, a slightly smaller, vast small universe also began to collapse. The Holy Land is collapsing. Has the ancestor died? Impossible. How could the ancestor possibly die? In this small universe, the descendants of Juyi God King were filled with horror. However, in the primordial cosmos and numerous small universes, the mighty beings cheered. The creatures from many reincarnation eras had lived in the shadow of Juyi God King, with even the primordial cosmos under his control. Previously, they had been mere food on Juyi God King's plate, chosen at will for consumption, powerless to resist. Until today, Juyi God King had finally perished, and they had all been liberated at last. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Although the death of Juyi God King drew some attention from the powers of the land of origin, they didn't care too much. After all, it was not uncommon for ordinary first-realm godly kings to fall. Even if they were weak and destroyed, they usually had time to reincarnate. Reincarnating to escape disaster was a common practice among ordinary godly kings. Juyi God King was weak, but even before Luo Feng had discovered the Great Extinction style, Juyi God King could still reincarnate to escape. The power of chaotic whole undying light was not enough to instantaneously annihilate Juyi God King along with his resurrection carrier. Even with the God King ultimate realm will combined with the Lai Yuan technique, there was no certainty of completely exterminating Juyi God King. After all, Juyi God King had traversed from the primordial universe, unlike those godly kings created through external forces in the shadow sky realm. After returning his disciple and Fengya to Huyang City, Luo Feng himself continued to travel through the land of origin. Tianji Icefield was a harsh environment, growing more frigid the deeper one went. Here. Yet Luo Feng arrived at a warm and comfortable expanse, where no snow or wind could be seen, and lush vegetation thrived, with many tribes living in the wilderness. This environment was comfortable, and the number of cultivators had greatly increased. This is the Fire Ancestor realm. The Fire Ancestor had long resided in Fire Ancestor City, ruling over an extremely vast territory. This vast area, due to his presence, had become warmer, more suitable for life. Taking up less than a tenth of the Tianji icefield, this place housed over half of the field's creatures. There are 5 reclusive cultivators with the strength of emperors in the second realm of Godly King. Among them, the Wind City Empress and the Fire Ancestor stand aloof. He stands aloof because he does not contend. The Fire Ancestor lived in the secluded Tianji icefield, not joining any power, and was rarely seen at various sacred sites. His strength was immense. Both ancient countries liked such powerful beings. He does not contend, yet he shelters more than half of the creatures in the Tianji icefield, Luo Feng mused as he journeyed through the Fire Ancestor realm, observing its prosperity and the reverence countless creatures held for the Fire Ancestor. Luo Feng also caught a distant glimpse of Fire Ancestor City. Fire Ancestor City seemed like a warm origin, with intangible rules in operation, naturally affecting the vast territories. Though it does not contend, it still protects countless creatures to the best of its ability. Admirable. Luo Feng also felt respect. There were very few powerhouses in the land of origin he admired, and the Fire Ancestor was one of them. Luo Feng continued to roam. Luo He. Inside Fire Ancestor City, a figure with simple clothes and red hair looked at Luo Feng from a distance and smiled. The land of origin is about to see the rise of another formidable being. As long as one comes to the Fire Ancestor realm, the Fire Ancestor can sense it. The Fire Ancestor then closed his eyes. His spirit and the myriad flames between heaven and earth seemed to merge as one. Some of these flames were used to cook food, some to refine pills, others to refine artifacts, and his spirit was one with these flames. Luo Feng arrived in the East Extreme Domain, the most remote and desolate place in the land of origin. The ancestor of the East Extreme Domain protects this place, and the Wind City Empress also hails from here. Luo Feng traversed this vast territory, where the power of heaven and earth was much thinner, and the treasures of the world were rare. However, this place was comfortable, and various fruits were common. These indigenous creatures were generally burly and gigantic, and they seldom used exquisite weapon-secret treasures, opting instead for simple weapons like stone and wooden clubs. Their diet was also very ordinary, consisting mainly of common fruits. They worshipped heaven and earth, and many indigenous creatures were attuning to and comprehending the universe. When they fought, it was also cruel and frenzied. The indigenous creatures care not for external objects, but seek what is within. Yet among them, many godly king-level beings have been born, even existences on the level of the Wind City Empress. Who can say that their path is mistaken? Luo Feng understood their way. Casting aside all externals, focusing on oneself, focusing on the great Tao. This was the path of the indigenous beings. Luo Feng walked to the end of the land of origin, looking ahead at the endless universe ocean. The primal chaos current surged tumultuously, dark and without end in sight. Whether it's the primordial cosmos or the land of origin, the world is fascinating. Luo Feng sat cross-legged at the edge of the continent, gazing at the universe ocean, yet many ancient godly kings have used countless creatures as fodder for their cultivation. They are all extremely intelligent and have partially unraveled the profound mysteries of the operation of the great Tao. However, they do not care about the joy and sorrow of ordinary creatures. What they care about is their own power. Whether they can reach the ultimate realm, whether they can transcend the source world. And so, those ancient beings meticulously schemed. Perhaps, this is a part of the natural order of the cosmos. Luo Feng understood this too. The operation of the cosmos is composed of 9 complete great Taos. The law of the jungle is just one aspect of it, which also drives countless creatures to strive and compete. Empathy is a characteristic of living beings, and Luo Feng also understood that his pity for the weak was an aspect of compassion in his emotions. The functioning of the cosmos, with the law of the jungle, emotions, order, cleansing of destruction, hope, all interwoven, contributed to the operation of the world. All things have their own Tao, and each has its fate. However, I have my Tao. Cultivators are those who overcome the cosmos with their own strength, With their Tao, they transcend the Tao of the cosmos and utterly break free from the source world. Luo Feng's eyes remained calm. When the time comes, I will be able to decide how everything operates. The so-called order and fate will be determined by me. This is cultivation. To follow the way of heaven is the path of the mediocre. To overcome the cosmos with individual strength is the pursuit of cultivators and the hope of the supreme rules that give birth to countless creatures, expecting them to transcend it. At this moment, Luo Feng's spirit underwent another transformation. For more than 2 centuries as a godly king, with a powerful soul foundation, cultivation in the dream domain, cultivation in infinite space, the assistance of treasures like the 5-colored treasure medicine and the destruction scale, creating the great extinction style from direct confrontation with dream memories, the 7 emotions of heart refining, journeying across the land of origin. A series of slow transformations, until now, had finally led to a qualitative change through accumulation. One's strength can prevail over heaven. The will of Luo Feng's spirit formed a clear humanoid figure, with a face similar to Luo Feng's. This clear figure enveloped Luo Feng, with terrifying will congealing, surveying in all directions with an intimidating presence. A spirit body. The will had become so powerful that it could leave the body and form an illusory entity. I feel, this spirit body is even stronger than my physical body. A will surpassing the godly king's level, extremely formidable, could suppress or even destroy any godly king's will before it. Breaking through this bottleneck from a godly king's will to a will beyond God King was the most difficult threshold on the path of Luo Feng's spiritual will. This bottleneck had trapped many godly kings. In the land of origin, only a very few could achieve this step. As of now, Luo Feng was one of them. This video will end here.